Okay, today we're going to try this type of cycling. I believe it's called road cycling, where you ride on paved surfaces. And we are in this beautiful wine region. Not quite sure if there's an appellation for this region, but it's where Solvang, Los Olivos, and Los Alamos all converge. Tons of cycling here, and the plan today is to do a 30-mile loop, some rolling hills, so a little bit of a change from all the unpaved mountains we've been riding. But are you excited?
I think so. I mean, it's beautiful. It is sunny today and clear. The hills are green. Traffic, pavement. It feels very retro. So hopefully the traffic volumes will be low.
Most of the rides we've been doing have been like completely traffic free. So this will be interesting experience after doing all those rides and living in Montana where it's kind of depopulated.
In Montana, we avoid trafficked roads like the plague because there's never any space and people drive like 4,000 miles an hour.
Nothing like here, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it looks like we have to play a little bit of Frogger across the 101. There's that. I don't know about this road cycling thing, guys.
Divide a highway, so in theory you could like cross one side and then the other.
Yeah. So far, this road cycling thing, not impressed. Right, so this area actually has kind of special significance for us because it's the region where we went on our very first bike tour and where it started this whole path less pedaled thing.
You know how long ago that was, Russ?
How long?
It was almost exactly 15 years ago.
Holy smokes, 15 years. So that's why we come back here fairly often, because the riding really is awesome, and it's just where we first fell in love with bikes and bike touring. What's it like coming back?
I don't know, is this like the conversation we had in the car? What does it mean? What does it mean to come back someplace? It's still beautiful here. I still really love this landscape. I don't know what it's like because I haven't ridden enough of this yet. It's weird to be riding, you know, on a road that you share with cars. It's weird to be riding on pavement because I just don't do that much these days, but it is still beautiful.
It's a different time, different place, we were different people back then. So it's interesting to kind of revisit all this. I really enjoyed that stretch with the trees on the side. Here it's completely exposed. I think the high is supposed to be in the 70s, which for us, after having lived in Montana where it's cold most of the time, it feels like heat stroke weather. Not a tree in sight. All right, we made it up to the top of Cat Canyon. Pretty reasonable on the way up, but at the top it did hit 10-11%, so it got a little bit punchy. What do you think of the climb?
I thought it was lovely. Nice and green today. But the best part was at the very top, because you pass a road narrows sign, the road gets smaller, and the lane lines go away, which is always an indication that there's even less traffic.
We're going to descend, and let's see what it looks like. Woo! Holy Chiba. Yeah. Okay, that descent's a little insane. It was really steep and curvy, amazing views of the valley. What a cool road. Did that make up for the crossing at 101?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those little gems that, you know, that maybe it's worth some crappiness in order to experience.
So I think we're in this kind of valley for a little bit, passed through a couple more vineyards, and one more climb of note, and then back into Los Alamos. a really interesting mix of uses out here. We passed vineyards, obviously, some oil drilling, some grazing with cows, some pot farms. A strange mix of uses. So we rode by a short stretch of some ag and what looked like a kind of gravel pit of some sort. Not my favorite. There's some heavy truck traffic, but we're back riding next to Vineyards, a little bit quieter and more our speed. So I don't know, this ride's a mix. There are definitely some really pretty parts, a couple of short bits that you just have to endure. We'll see what the rest of the ride's like. So Foxen Canyon, the deeper you get into it, the better it gets. Totally love that there's some shaded trees. Traffic's been fairly light. This is a ride that, if you can, you probably want to ride it midweek. I can imagine this road having a lot of drunken tourist traffic on the weekend, so would probably avoid that if you could. But so far, not too bad. So like we mentioned before, this is the area where we went on our first bike tour. And I think the way I tried to sell it to Laura was, you know, imagine doing, you know, wine and cheese tasting in France, but here in our own backyard. And it worked, right?
Yes, amazingly. Amazingly it worked. And I say amazing because that was like, it was cold, we got lost, so many things went wrong, but it was a lovely trip.
Yeah, at the time we were living in Long Beach, which is pretty much flat as a pancake. So coming here, you know, there were hills that we weren't used to, and, you know, double-digit grades. And I remember it being really, really hard in retrospect. But of course, now we've done a lot more riding. It's more enjoyable this time around.
Right. We know what a hill is. We know that there's an end, and then there's the enjoyment on the other side. At the time, I think we were just like, oh my God, make it stop.
So I'm digging this portion of Foxen Canyon. I think it turns into another road, Alisal Canyon or Alisal Road at some point. See what it looks like. All right, so we've made our, I think, second to last turn of the day onto Aliso's Canyon. A little bit more up, but then we should have a nice cruisy downhill back into Los Alamos. I don't know, what do you think?
It is beautiful, but as beautiful as it is, I feel like, you know, I hate to say it, but it's kind of boring. You know, this, you know, road riding is so much just, you know, sit and spin. Kind of gets a little bit monotonous. And I miss how dynamic gravel riding is.
In some ways, this is beginning to feel like a really pretty Zwift ride.
Yeah, I mean, it is gorgeous out here, and I love this landscape, and so it feels kind of sacrilegious to say that it's, you know,
it's boring.
It's boring. That I'm bored. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I've just I've been swayed by the dark side of gravel.
All right, let's finish her up. Right, so we've wrapped up the ride. It was a little bit of a slog near the end after the downhill was just kind of flattish and with a headwind. You know, I mean, I think if you're into road riding, it's a pretty good route.
I agree. It was a nice road loop.
Perfectly acceptable. Some decent climbs, beautiful scenery if you've never been in the area. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to do this route was to see if it would rekindle a passion in cycling on the pavement. And
did it?
I don't know. I don't think it did.
I know it didn't for me. Really kind of a strange experience to be like, in such a gorgeous place and really enjoying the scenery, but also be like bored. You know, I just have come to appreciate how much you move when you're on gravel, and it's just kind of like interesting things to, I don't know, it just keeps it interesting somehow.
You know, it just kind of felt like being on Zwift, to be frank.
It did give me an appreciation for why roadies are so into going fast and why they're so competitive, because, you know, you kind of need something else when all you're doing is just sitting and spinning.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience because I feel like the gravel routes that we've done, there's a lot more to look at. It's a lot easier to stop and look at those things. I feel like on lots of places on this ride I wanted to pull over, but there just wasn't a good spot. You know, you're always worried about traffic. So although it was low traffic, it wasn't like zero traffic, which is a big difference.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and so that kind of like low grade anxiety of like always kind of listening over your shoulder. Is there somebody coming? Is there somebody coming?
I mean, I do think we've deacclimated from riding in traffic. We used to commute in Los Angeles, in Long Beach. It wasn't a big deal. But I think as we've aged and the riding that we've been attracted to the last, I don't know, like decade or so, you know, it's just, if you can avoid riding in traffic, you know, we'd rather choose that. So I know we're totally selling the ride, but if you want to ride, it's, you know, perfectly acceptable, fine loop. Definitely do it during the weekdays in the morning, in the cooler months, because it's, you know, they'll just be like super hot. That would be the best time to do it. We'll put the link in the description below. If you guys have been enjoying this ride series, you know, consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon, buying some merch at our new merch store. Look for some more interesting rides, probably not another road ride. Maybe one more, who knows. And keep this up upside down.